Next, we're going to move on to how to add to garments and patterns by adding to them, adding to the bottom of them. And if you want to add to the length of an existing garment, this is definitely the category that you would want to pay special attention to. Looking at the pictures there from the left to the right, the first two is an underdress and an overdress, but what I'm featuring here really is the addition of a ruffle. It was interesting to me how I found that as I created the underdress first, that the ruffle really pulled that dress longer. So as we get into the pattern creation for this underdress, overdress style, I have then encompassed that fact in the calculations. And then the red dress there that I got from Pinterest most likely is the simple addition of some lace at the bottom. And there are some definite techniques in just adding a flat band to the bottom of a garment that I'm sure you'll find helpful as well. Here you have, Do you think this looks attractive? This is one of the best examples of what not to do that I could possibly have come up with. I couldn't have made this up any better. Never, never, never put a ruffle where you want to look smaller. This is not a flounce. This is a gathered ruffle. Gee whiz. Slashed knit peplum. I wouldn't even really technically call this a peplum. But it just makes her tummy and her hips look huge. Regular price, $345, on sale for $104. Personal opinion here, it's not even worth $4. I kept seeing this garment pop up on Pinterest, so when it was time to make my expecting daughter a garment for Christmas, I ran it by her and she said yes, that she loved it. I created it out of a pine green double knit for the upper layer, and I decided to give it a little more body because it's winter time. I would also underline it, and from the underlining I would attach the ruffle made out of chiffon. That's what I did. It turned out really cute. I didn't manage to get many pictures of it at all, so I made it again, as I do try my best to thoroughly test things. So that was my inspiration. Let's go on and see how I created it. Here's the garment that I made for my daughter. You can see in the left photograph that the ruffle, as it's attached to the underlining, is stuck up a couple of inches underneath where the hem of the overdress is at. On the ruffle itself, I did do a rolled hem. And you can see in the right photograph that in my pattern drafting, I had added a little too much flare at the bottom of the overdress, so I did have to make that alteration. But it was very worthwhile for me to have made this test garment, and she loves it. To explain this photograph to you, follow along, and you also need to go to your printed booklet, Ruffles and Bands, Roman numeral number 1, under Adding To. The second bullet, steps number 1, 2. The pink is just how much length I have added to the garment. Now we're doing the underdress, and I made a note that this added length would be for also attaching to it a 4 3/4 inch deep ruffle. So overall, my underdress was 36 inches long. My idea on all of your lengthening patterns is that if you make them out of a colored tissue paper and clearly label them with a dashed line, as you can see at the top there of the pink, of where you would pin or tape it to your master pattern, then you'll just have all of these wonderful options. Your rear view. Way back in college, I was taught that if you simply added a 1/2 inch to 1 inch to your length at the center back and then curved that gently up to the side seams, that it just created a better rear view look. So I've decided to give you this the terminology rear view grace, and you can see how simple that is to do. I've simply added 1 inch there at the bottom of the center back. You see I've got my back pattern tissue underneath the front, so you really have two layers of pink here. So I've added that 1 inch back grace length, which I'm calling your rear view grace. So just take that as good advice. You can do it to anything and everything, and it will make your rear end view look nicer. And here's some actual side view proof of rear view grace. The garment at the left was a garment that I was privileged enough to be able to select from the wardrobe of a friend of mine, and this garment was not longer in the back. So when I added the lace to it, it just goes straight around my tush, and even though it's black lace and I would wear it with black slim pant, I don't think it's very attractive. If I had taken time to have realized that the back was not a little bit longer than the front, I would have actually rehemmed this garment, even if I had to make it shorter, and I would have done so that the front was shorter than the back, so that the back was longer. On the other hand, the photograph on the right-hand side, this is a garment that I created. You can see how I've sloped it down in the center back. Now, I did just last night rip this modified flounce off because I really, even though it's fingertip length, my fingertips are not extended, and I really want it to be about 3 inches longer. And I have enough of that fabric remnant. So when you're not happy with something, like I teach all my little girls in sewing, you can always fix it. So I am going to fix this garment, and then I know I'll love it. So here then quickly are both the front and the back for this underdress. You can see that there's a definite curve and that the center back is longer. The back is the pattern piece at the left. Not that hard, right? Here's an extra goodie for you in this pattern pamphlet, how I took information from one of my favorite Chico shells that I had purchased long ago and have been a staple in my wardrobe. At any rate, I liked how it came up underneath the arm. I liked the fit of it across the bust. I liked the neckline. So if you have a garment that you really like a lot of features of, you can easily take that to your master pattern. Here you can see that I have laid it down on top of colored tissue, which is on top of my master pattern. I have very carefully taken my needle wheel, which is what you see in the left photograph, and gone along the finished edge of my garment. With the needle wheel, you can be careful. You're not using a magic marker. You can't get the marker on your garment. Okay, so with care, looking at the right garment, I could have gone along that back neckline with a pencil, yes, but how would I get the front neckline there? With the needle wheel, you can just run right along that edge. The needles of the wheel will not hurt your garment. It's no different than poking pins into the garment. So then those perforations create little holes in the tissue paper. Then you can draw over the little holes. So that is the magic of how the needle wheel works. I carry those at my website, and they're just $7.95. They come from Japan. They're just a great tool to have if you want a copy ready to wear. So you can see here that I have copied not only the neckline of the back in this case, I did the same thing for the front, and also the armhole. The other thing that I did was that I made sure that the crosswise stretch of this garment pretty much matched the crosswise stretch of the fabric out of which I was making the underdress. You can't do this out of a fabric that would stretch less and expect it to fit, but I had confirmed that the fabrics were the same as far as crosswise stretch, so that's why I went ahead and did this. So now I have these templates created for this fit, and I can superimpose them over my master pattern in this upper area, and voila, I have the same fit as this Chico shell. So quickly, here you can see both my front and my back patterns for the underdress, and I would simply cut them out around the brown and then lay the templates on the top there for this Chico shell adaptation and cut off the part that was the initial cut, the brown part. So that's how I make use of my templates. Here's an example of exactly why a pattern designer needs to test and retest her garments. When I created the underdress, as I added that double full ruffle to the bottom edge, what it did was it pulled down. It was so much extra weight that it actually pulled the underdress longer. So if I had gone ahead and calculated the length of the overdress according to the calculations given to you in the printed part of this pamphlet, it would have ended up way too short. Luckily, I had not cut it out, so at this point, you see I've got the underdress on my duct tape double. I've got the pattern as I had drafted it for the overdress pinned on it, matching the shoulder seams. And you can see here that I have to add at least 2.5, 2 3/4 inches to the finished length of the overdress in order for the ruffle to be tucked up underneath. So I add that 2 3/4 plus hem allowance. Therefore, since this testing revealed that the weight of a ruffle can pull a knit to a longer length, I can warn you of that and tell you to create the underdress completely before you draft the pattern for the overdress. So all together then, here you can see the pattern extensions that I have drafted that I could pull out and use again for my basic knit top pattern. The pink represents the length that the underdress would need to be cut. Now it's shorter, remember, because we're going to add a ruffle to it. The ruffle I would not need to create a pattern piece for. I would just realize how far around it was in circumference, double that for a nice fullness to the ruffle, and I've noted here that my ruffle is 4 3/4 inches long, so that would just be rectangles, so no reason to make a pattern piece for that. And then for the overdress, then it, including a 1-inch hem, needs to be cut as long as the pink plus the green. As I cut out the overdress for this ruffled bottom tunic version, I was having a fit trying to get this burnout jersey to not cling on itself while I tried to fold in order to cut the front and the back. So I decided to just do it single layer. Now, instead of taking time to make myself a full pattern piece, this is how I do it. To remind myself not to cut down the center front, I stick a pin out like this, both at the top and the bottom. That's the Londa, don't cut around here, notification, warning. At this point in my design process, I really had not decided the neckline finish that I wanted, so I always err on the side of allowing too much fabric. You can always cut it down. It's hard to add it back in. That's why at the neckline, I've cut the highest neckline, not the scoop neckline, but the highest one. Here's just a quick bit of information on when you're cutting a knit fabric and you've got a lot more yardage than will fit on your cutting table. Do you see how you don't let it hang totally off the table? And that would be better if my stool were even higher. But I have supported the excess weight of the additional fabric yardage by putting it here on the stool. Never let fabric hang off, creating drag or pull on the fabric that you're cutting. Here is when that excess growth, the length of the underdress, became apparent to me in reality. When I put that dress on my duct tape double and then put the overdress on top, and I was just sure glad that I had allowed extra lengths to the overdress when I saw that the underdress had gotten longer. So here I am measuring up from the floor, deciding exactly how long I want that overdress to be. And I would recommend your process be the same. Cut that overdress plenty long, then try it on with the underdress and measure up from the floor all the way around that distance that you want, the length that you want it to be. And remember to make the back a little bit longer. Here's some more Pinterest food for thought. Follow with me the pictures from the left to the right here under ruffles and bands. The picture at the left, yes, there's a ruffle around the very lowest most portion, and again, see how the back is longer, much longer. But really that cream-colored lacy part is what I would call a band. There's probably several inches more fullness to it than there is to the top itself, and it looks to me like it's been eased in, as I already shared with you that you need to do on bands. Let's look at the center picture. In that one, it's pleated. It's a lighter weight fabric, as you can tell looking there between her legs. It's kind of sheer, so I would probably roll hem edge this strip and then pleat it. I have a wonderful technique for pleating fabric regularly using a fork. That's one of the many videos that you'll find at my YouTube channel. And again, I would make this piece be a little bit longer so it gets eased into that gray heather top. And then the final top there, the red and black one, it appears to me as if this really is a band. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's not really flounced. The flare of it seems to follow the same angle going out at the sides as the black portion. And then it has a little extra godet or shaped piece in there. If you look real close, you can see that that lower left to upper right angle is also a seam up through the black top. You could do that or not. I don't think it's adding all that much, but a band can be a heavier fabric and it can be wider. And the thing that I like about what you're seeing here is that the division between the black part and the red part is not equal. The black part is more than the red lower part. So just always remember, don't put two equal parts within any expanse. Just don't do that. That's not good design. Enter again more ideas from Pinterest. The gray garment on the left, those are just more bands. Now this garment has a princess line to it. If you look close, you can see that. And it's used a different fabric. That fabric has been repeated at the neckline, and it looks to me as if there's a lot of raw edges going on here. Look with me at the picture at the right. Now this definitely is a peplum. It has been pleated in somewhat to the top, and note the interesting attachment line. It's higher at the left and then comes around lower at the right as you're looking at the garment. And it also looks to me as if this has been put right onto the top of the garment. Do you see that kind of little ruffle above the pleated part? That's those pleats. That's the raw edge or a finished edge right there. This really intrigues me, and it's definitely on my to-do list. So once you know how to sew, you can look at pictures like this and then you can do it yourself. It's so much fun. And then finally, yet one more idea that I think is just ingenious, and that is to create a little half slip that has a decorative border to it that sticks out from underneath your overgarment. Super simple, super quick. A great way of adding length. The only thing that I want to draw your attention to here is that, boy, does that contrast color certainly draw your attention to the crotch and derriere level of this garment. So just remember where you're drawing attention and take that into account when you're selecting the color. I really don't like black and white on a blonde, and I really wouldn't use white to draw that much attention to that level on my body, but the idea is a good one. Now we're moving on to adding two garments using godets, G-O-T-E-T-S. These are merely different shaped pieces of fabric, generally thought to be triangles, but they don't have to be, inserted into the side seams of a garment. They can also be inserted in many different places, like the bottom of princess seams, but it's extra fabric which adds additional width to the hemline. I'll tell you about this really fun top. This is waiting for you at your friendly Walmart store in the men's department. This is a Russell 360 men's poly lycra t-shirt, and I like to buy them big and then just have fun doing upcycle techniques on it. On this one, I added a godet, G-O-D-E-T. So this is another way that you can add shape and length to the hemlines of a garment. On this top, I've also used scraps from my stash. I've used the collar from a polo t-shirt. More of that kind of fun you can find in my upcycle memento tops pattern. To create the godets for this lilac t-shirt upcycle, you can see that I've taken another t-shirt. This is the lower hem of it, and the piece that I'm going to make use of is that shape on the right. So you can see that I made a great big diagonal from like the southwest to the northeast, and then a vertical straight down in the middle, and that weird 5-shaped piece, that pentagon, is what's going to be inserted into the side seams. So I did this twice. You can see along the bottom edge that a hem edge is already accomplished at that end. It's that diagonal line at the left and the long vertical on the right that will be inserted into the side seams. This picture is pretty self-explanatory because I've labeled it pretty well. As I described before, you've got the side seam split open, you've got the front hemline, and then you've got the front side seam, and then do you see the two lowermost edges? And then you've got the back side seam. That lowermost edge at the bottom is already hemmed, but I'll have to hem the one there going vertically at the left. But this is just the shape that I put into the side seams of this already made t-shirt. In these photographs, you can see that I had fun trimming it up. Let's follow around from the upper left-hand corner and across and down. That's a picture of the lower front hemline. I decided to make the front shorter so that the back would be longer. In doing this, it made the bottommost edge of those godets match in length. The next picture there across the top, you can see that I sheared in along the dropped shoulder lines. You can see that in the picture below. And you can learn more about shearing at my Sensational Shearing pattern booklet. And then I've taken pieces of fabrics in my purple stash box. The kind of metallic one is exactly that. It's a metallic print. I just cut some circles, and then the other pieces, the one on the right side is actually the collar from a knit polo shirt. What you can see if you look real closely there at that picture and then the one at the lower left is that I have added bobbin work. This means that I stitched these lines from the top in order to have a line to sew on from the wrong side. I then put heavy decorative thread in my bobbin and put it on a straight stitch or a zigzag. I think I did some of both, and worked the stitch again over that previous stitching, putting that decorative thread on the top. Bobbin work is lots of fun, and if you haven't worked with it yet, I highly suggest you give it a whirl. Now we're moving on to one of my favorite garments that I created in this pamphlet. At the upper left, you see the men's 2XL t-shirt, sweatshirt, French terry shirt that I purchased. I probably bought it for about $5. That's usually my limit. Then in the middle photograph, you see my end result from the front, and the lower right photograph, my end result from the back. Let me tell you more about it. And I've given you some close-ups of the godets that I created on this top. The one on the left, that is the left side godet, and the one on the right is the godet that I put on the right. So you can quickly see that even though the sleeve is over top of the one in the left, that one has really 3 different men's ties used, and the one on the right has, as you can see, just 2 men's ties. Now, along the exterior edge of each of these godets is a rolled strip of cross-grain cut black and white stripe knit fabric. I love to use black and white fabrics just as a little trim to help tie everything together. That's definitely a trick I learned from Marcy Tilton. And the men's ties have been completely torn apart so that these ties really are just the single uppermost layer of the men's tie. However, the lower points, whether it be the front wider point or the skinny back point, I have left the lining attached to those pieces. So just the interfacing of the tie, I wash them, I press them. It's wonderful bias. They're really soft. And I just cut apart the seam line there, created these godets, put it on my dress form, just kind of pinned it on. You can see at the one on the left side, you see how it really crosses over towards the front? That's just the way it wanted to be. It's just the way it looked best. You can do this on a dress form, or you can do it pinning it on yourself. You don't have to sew these godets just to the side seams as you've torn them apart. You could certainly let, as I did here, the godet overlap one seam and just plop it on top of your garment where you want to put it. There are no rules in this kind of sewing. It's free, it's creative, it's do what you want to do. As long as it works and you like the way it looks, it's A+ in my book. Go for it. Here's another progress picture on this top. At the left there, you can see that I have put my master pattern over top in order to cut the armhole, the shoulder, and the neckline. Again, I would always cut a neckline higher than I think I might want because you can always cut it lower. You can see here that there's too much in the arm area. So where you see that white stitching, that cover hem stitching, I'm going to cut that piece out, and those end up the upper part of the sleeves actually. And then look with me at the right picture. Here I have pinned those ties together just as I've decided I wanted them to be. And what I'm doing here is that I'm zigzagging over the uppermost laying tie, which in this case is the striped one on the left, with a tiny, tiny zigzag, stitch length 3, width probably about 2, with monofilament, in this case probably smoke because it's darker color, in my needle with the upper tension lowered, and polyester thread in the bobbin. So please understand, I'm not doing conventional sewing here. I'm not putting right sides together and sewing a seam. I am simply pinning things, as you can see here, parallel to the seams, pinning them together how I want them to be, and then just stitching them together like my sewing machine was a piece of Scotch tape. This was actually a picture, the one on the left, of earlier in the creative process. I always pull together everything that I like, the coloration and the pattern, and then I start to try to use it, and I either like it or I don't. And in this case, this was a piece of another man's shirt. I think this one belonged to my late dad, and I really thought it was kind of muddy looking, kind of dark, and I liked the silk ties better. So off it came, and back into the stash it went. And then I proceeded with the ties as I've already started to describe to you. And you can see that in the picture at the right. In this picture also you can see that it just felt like I wanted to make a tuck under the left bust there and stick in a little scrap with that white cover stitching on it. So that's just what I did to make it fit a little bit closer there. Again, you do what you want to do. You're the boss. This is fun, fun sewing. Let's look at some pictures that I have found on People and online. I believe how this was done is that this lace border was just laid right on top of the peplum, zigzagged on, and then flounce fabric cut away from behind. It's just that simple. Now, on this one, she's really slim, so she can afford to put that light color around her hips and derriere. Can you? Ask yourself that. Maybe you just want to make things to sell if your body doesn't look like this and you want to do this. Maybe you've got a granddaughter or a daughter who can wear this well, but I just caution you, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should wear it. This top at the right shows a godet that actually was pleated in. So it was extra wide, and it was really, it just had a pleat an inverted pleat put at the top. And if you look real close, you can see stitching across the very top horizontally right at the top of the godet. And yeah, it was just a way of adding some extra fullness. So again, do what you want to do. This one is really fun. If you look close, can you see that those are zipper coils? She actually installed a zipper in the opening of the side seam and then took really flounces. These godets have got extra fullness, and it looks like it's chiffon and with a heavier layer underneath, and sewed that flounce underneath the zipper. I think it's just a really, really cool idea, and I can't wait to try this one. In this case, it's dark, so yes, it's interesting, but it's not going to draw quite as much attention as that white lace border. Here are 3 more to look at, following along from left to right. The one on the left is a very narrow, more of a tailored look. It looks to me as if it is a piece of denim that has been inserted into the side seams of this heavier black and white print garment. And if you look way up at the top there, that blue was also put on the cuff. If I were creating this garment, I would put it in yet one more place, and that would be a little bit around the neck, but that's just me. The middle photograph is a great top that a friend of mine here in Jackson came into our sewing guild wearing one day, and I just thought, ooh, this is wonderful, Linda, I got to take a picture. So she was generous to let me do that, and you can see that there are floral fabrics here. There's a little trim with the white polka dots on it, but it definitely is a godet of 2 different parts pieced together with trim just stuck in those 2 places. I'm a fan of 3s, so I would have probably put that trim down the left side of that godet as well. And then from my favorite catalog, Soft Surroundings, princess seams lend themselves very, very well to adding godets. So you can see here right above her forefinger there, that is the top point of the godet, so it's been put in both of the side front princess seams and then the same done at the side back. So there are some more ideas for you. Godets are everywhere. Look at these that are much taller, longer godets. This looks like a slim black sweater there at the left that was simply cut up one of those ribbing lines, and then these tall triangular cone type shapes stitched in as godets, and it really adds a lot of swing to it. My guess is that the lower circumference of each of these godets is probably about 9 to 11 inches. Then the one on the right, it's just a sweater. Again, cut up straight into the sweater, add those triangular pieces, and then it looks as if there's also a band of lace around in addition. Now we're going to move on to the addition of flounces. I have a whole pattern about flounces. In fact, it's called Flirty Flounces. So if you want to learn even more about this, I highly recommend that pattern. I found that flounces are a really quick and easy way to transform an existing top into a longer tunic length. Now, the look does have a little bit of flip to it, but I will show you how you can increase and decrease the amount of flouncing. I highly recommend doing it with a knit fabric and not worrying about the hem at all. The lowermost edge on both of these garments and all of the knit flounces I've ever done is cut and raw. No need to finish it. The knits will not ravel. I have done it out of both really lightweight jersey type knits and also out of a heavier ponte type knit. And I will have a blog post on the garment I made with the heavier knit. It is time to put your thinking hat on. Follow along. My full flounce math, again, is found in my Flirty Flounces pattern, but I also have a really great video on it, and it is up at my YouTube channel. It's one of the episodes that I did for the It's So Easy PBS series, but let me review it for you quickly here. First of all, you need to measure where you want a flounce to go. I would highly recommend that you would have one full flounce for the front of a garment and another full flounce for the back. Now, when I say full flounce, I mean a donut. I mean a full circle. So looking at the pattern piece right there, do you see that I've written very clearly, cut on fold. One full circle equals the front, and then another full circle would equal the back. So how do you make this flounce pattern? You follow the steps there. Measure where it's going to go. So let's say the front was 20 inches or so. You would subtract an inch and divide by 6. That value that you come up with is the radius of your inner circle. So you just fold a piece of tissue paper and come out from the corner that amount. But that is the stitching line. So you need to go back towards the corner, your seam allowance depth, to cut then that inner radius of your flounce. Then when you go to put this on your garment, that inner diameter difference of the middle of the donut straightens out. With a woven, you need to stay stitch that and clip. But I have found with a knit, it's really not necessary. You don't need to stay stitch, you don't need to clip. It will stretch and it will work just fine. You obviously would have to do the same for the back, and I would seam them together so that you have a side seam on each side of you of one flounce or another flounce. That's how you do it. Looking at this garment, which is the full flounce, it's really quite flouncy, and it hits me right at the fullest part of my derriere. So it was not a success, but that's what pattern designers do. They do a lot of experimentation, and if they're honest about it, like I try to be, they will put before you their mistakes so that you cannot do what they did. Therefore, I would highly recommend that you always err on cutting your flounces plenty much longer than what you think. I think a safe amount longer might be as much as 3 inches longer. So you would just need to create your patterns before you then figured out how much fabric you would need. I hope you still have that thinking hat on. Let's say that you wanted to make a flounce out of a heavier weight fabric, like a double knit, a ponte. I would think that you perhaps might want to decrease the amount of flounce, those cones. You want less of that. If you look here at this picture, you see at the top where it's the original, and by that I mean the full circle flounce. But at the bottom, can you see that I have slashed from the bottom up to the seam line 3 times and overlapped each one about 3.5 to 4 inches. So you want to make those lines equal distant from each other and then overlap them the same amount. Now, to make this work, you will also have to snip in from that cut upper edge to the seam line as well, because as you overlap the bottom part, the upper little seam allowance part needs to expand. And when I'm doing this kind of slashing and lapping, I always use some Scotch tape and reinforce that seam line so those little hinges remain and your work doesn't fall apart. The important thing that you really need to think through and understand on this, do you see there at the left I said cut on fold? So you would need to cut one of these, which would be your front flounce, cut it on the fold, and then you would do the same thing for the back, cut one of those on the fold, and then you'll have side seams. But you can simply take your pattern and draw it longer. Look with me at the photograph there on the right-hand side of the slide where I've got the green additional length. That's what I'm referring to at this point. And then decide where on this do I want the flounce to start. And draw a line. Cut your pattern apart. You'll have to add seam allowances to both pieces so that when you put it back together, it will work. But then, if you slash up equal distances apart on that additional lower part and spread them each the same amount, you're basically doing the opposite of what we've done here. It's just a different way of approaching it. So I'm calling it increasing the fullness of the length extension that you've added to the pattern by slashing and spreading. You can actually even do this to a pattern and cut it as one. It would just really come down and then swing out like a trumpet. You can play with it. If in doubt, always make a muslin. That's why you need a stash. But if you're making a knit garment, your muslin, quote unquote, needs to be of a knit fabric as well. This is lots of fun, and I really do encourage you to play with it.